Hello everyone and welcome back to Wargame Red Dragon. We're in the armory for Eastern Bloc Coalition and we've moved past infantry now, doing unit comparisons in the support tab, and specifically for anti-plane and anti-helicopter, anti-air, which there's so much here to talk about. It's really incredible. So we have Balanced with us today. He's going to lead us through this tab, starting with the Cube M4 and the Flatcom OSA AKM, but moving on to some other options that are still very good, very cost efficient, and I'd say uniquely powerful for Eastern Bloc.
Basically when we're talking about like two main AA options, I mean, we're looking at a heavy AA piece and a more mid-range AA piece in the OSA AKM and the Cube M4. Generally, the biggest differences between them are 9 versus 7 HE, one being wheeled, one being tracked, and the big range difference between them. So one of the big advantages the Cube M4 has, even though it's slower, the range with the 9 HE means it hits out farther and it hits harder than the OSA would be. And that matters a lot. When you're intercepting planes, right? Like if the 9HE Cube M4 hits something, right? It's going to stun it, right? And leave it on 1 HP. If it crits, which it will crit, they will crit at least like once a game usually, it'll one-shot it. If it's not a 2 armor plane, it'll straight up one-shot like a plane.
So I have a question, I guess, two questions about this. First, scale of 1 to 10, how important is that range? And then second, I didn't see you mention the accuracy, and I'm just curious, is there a big difference? I usually take anti-plane, anti-air in double stacks. Is there a big difference between 55 and 65, or is it not so important here?
So firstly, regarding the range I'd put on like a 7 or 8. In terms of importance, it's a pretty big deal. Being able to intercept planes before they do damage, like there's a huge difference between killing a bomber after it drops its payload and killing a bomber before it drops its payload. That's part of the reason why ASFs are so important, right? Intercepting something before it like is able to do damage, that means that the value that the investment that your opponent made didn't even like get anything done. Basically a completely wasted investment, or the potential for that, right? And then 65 versus 55% accuracy, that is a huge deal. Accuracy when you're applying it to ECM is a big deal, because you have to remember, like I just mentioned, planes have ECM, right? They have their own value to reduce your accuracy. So 65% accuracy isn't the true value you're going to be having. You're going to have shooting at like most planes that have ECM.
And
right?
the issue there too is like it's plane specific, so it depends on what your opponent brings in. It's beyond your control, really. Like, you want your anti-air to shoot down every plane that's coming out. And Exactly. It might have 0. It might be a cheap rocket pod plane with 0 ECM. It might be a top of the line ASF with 50%. So you never really know until it's upon you. So I guess that does make a lot of sense. But you mentioned before we started the recording that there's a lot more to talk about with the OSA line in general. Do you want to expand on that just a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the OSA line in general is just phenomenal. The AK, the base OSA AK, is probably one of the most cost-effective anti-plane AA pieces in the game. It's going to be doing the same job as the AKM, a little bit less range, a little bit less accuracy, but the same job for cheaper, so you get more of them. And basically, you're going to have say a 3 stack of OSA AKs, like that'll shoot down pretty much anything in most cases, unless they get pretty lucky.
No, the range there is getting really, really small. So 3,150 meter range. I get annoyed sometimes when my 4,000 meter range anti-air gets out of range. How far up can you take these guys?
You got to play them pretty far up. I wouldn't say like directly with your infantry and your tanks, obviously not that, but you got to play them pretty close. They're one of those AA pieces where if you're able to like properly place them, like proper positioning matters a lot with this. The OSA line in general is more positioning based than like these heavy AA pieces. But
maybe a little bit less new player friendly then, I guess.
Yeah, I'd argue it is less new player friendly. If we're talking in pure cost effectiveness, like a 2 stack of OSAs is going to be more effective than like one heavy AA piece for the same price, by the way.
Gotcha. I mean, 2 of these versus I guess the Cube M4 is only 75, but if we're looking at the Neva, you can literally get 2 of the 45-point OSAs instead of 1 Neva.
Yeah, and they'll shoot down planes really efficiently. 7 HE is still good versus 2 armor planes. If you're critting, you're going to be one-shotting. If I remember correctly, you should be.
Yeah, that's 7.
Yeah, you definitely will.
Then we also have the 30-pointer.
Yeah, okay, so the 30-point OSA, oh man, I have a lot of thoughts on this unit. One of the most overperforming AA pieces in the game because of the way the veterancy system works. So basically, its anti-healer range is great. It has 7 HE, so it'll one-shot planes if it crits. And because it is so cheap, it will scale to elite so fast. And the moment an elite base OSA exists, it is going to be one-shotting 1 out of every 5 times. 20% chance to one-shot.
Just to briefly cover that for those of you who might not be aware of how that works, my vague understanding of this is whenever you deal damage or kill a unit of equivalent value, you go up 1 unit of veterancy, and then there's also some sort of black hole about if you take and recover from morale damage, things like that. You slowly gain experience, but what we're talking about right now is kills. So you have one 30-point OSA, and let's say it kills a 90-point helicopter, like for example the Blue Dragon's Ninja. That's 3 levels of veterancy. You take it at trained, you go hardened veteran elite right there. It's wonderful.
Yeah, the veterancy system is a little weird in how it works, but generally speaking, OSA, base OSA, because of its price, every time it hits or kills something, and it will hit and kill, it is very effective. Do not let the 35% accuracy fool you. It is very effective. It's going to vet up, and the moment this thing hits elite, I mean, it's a 30-point AA piece one-shotting planes. There's not much else to say.
Fair enough. Well, those are a lot of good options. I guess just to wrap it up, which one, or I guess which of these do you take, up or down vetted, and why?
So I'd probably say you'd want to take like a heavy AA piece like the Coupe, or basically the Noah, in most cases. And then you could probably take either OSA AK, base OSA, the Tor is honestly a good choice too.
And we didn't really cover it, but the unique thing about the Tor in my mind is the 3150 meter range versus helicopter. It is one of the longer ranges you can get for this coalition.
The Tor is just a super solid AA piece. I definitely put it as like one of my recommendeds. You need to keep in mind though when you're building your AA tab is that generally speaking you'll be carrying LSTR in your infantry tab, right? So do you really need an anti-helo AA piece? I'm not so certain that you do, and you need to make that decision for yourself if you need something dedicated like the base OSA. No matter how good it is, right? It still takes time to vet up and stuff like that, right?
Gotcha.
So generally speaking, I'd argue that most people want to run something mid-range, so like OSA AK, and then maybe a heavy AA piece, or they'd run like Taurs mainly primarily as their AA, maybe the AKM. You have a lot of variety. Just so long as you're picking some of these like excellent choices that you have in your AA tab, you can't go wrong. As long as you have basically like in mind, like compared to your infantry tab, as long as you have something that works with that, it'll be golden.
Fair enough. Well, that's our unit comparison for today. A big thumbs up on the anti-air for the Eastern Bloc Coalition. Hope you guys found it informative. We'll have another one here for you tomorrow.